Throughout the course of human history, there are moments when innovation alters the course of civilization. One such moment was on the outbreak of the Second World War and the need for Great Britain to gain the edge over a very dominant German army. The recent invention of the airplane had completely transformed the way that warfare was conducted and was completely dominant in the air during the late days of World War I, and as a new world war seemed more and more possible, new forms of defense were needed to deal with the overwhelming dominance in the air. As the world drew into combat during World War II, a new technology was implemented that would tip the scales in the Allied powers' favor. This invention was called radar. Before the invention of radar, human spotters had played a crucial role in detecting enemy aircrafts. Positioned in various locations such as open fields, shorelines, rooftops, and hills, these spotters relied on binoculars, spyglasses, and hearing to monitor and identify approaching aircrafts. Acoustic location was also used for passive detection of aircrafts by picking up their noise from their engines. However, human spotters and acoustic locations were unreliable because of environmental factors, misinterpreting, poor training, limited coverage, and other human errors. And with the advancements of stealth technology on aircrafts along with their speeds and the increased likelihood of air bombings, there was a desperate need for an earlier warning than human spotters could always provide. The solution was radar. In 1886, Heinrich Hertz discovered that radio waves can be reflected off solid objects. Following this breakthrough, in 1915, Robert Watson Watt expanded on this discovery by bouncing radio waves off of storm clouds, allowing them to track the location of thunderstorms. During the 1930s, a second war was seeming to be a likely possibility. Due to unreliability of previous methods such as human spotters when compared to the increased power of airplanes, Britain and other countries set out for new methods to make them less vulnerable to air raids. This led to the British Air Ministry adding the Committee for the Scientific Survey of Air Defense to the division, so Britain would be less vulnerable to the air raids. Great Britain began to reach out to Watt, who had proven himself dominant in the field of radio technology, about the possibility of radio detection and of building Britain its own death ray to counter the ones rumored that Germany had. Even though Watt proved that a death ray is mathematically impossible, he was intrigued by the idea of radio detection to help solve Britain's other problems of early warning and detection. Watt and his assistant, Arnold F. Wilkins, began testing a system that would bounce radio waves off of an aircraft. When they tested this theory, it led to the first ever system of radar. Radar, short for radio detection and ranging, works by sending out electromagnetic waves to bounce off an object and return to a receiver. This allows radar to locate objects determined by where the waves bounce back from, and the time this takes tells the operators how far away that object is. This new method instantly changed everything, as it would allow stations to immediately know the precise locations of incoming objects, rendering human spotters and other previous technologies obsolete. Radar could detect a single plane from miles away, which completely changed warfare by making any air surprise attack worthless. Radar was most prominently applied in the skies. Radar was equipped inside of the nose of each aircraft, and they were now able to navigate the air whether it was sunny or foggy and detect any enemy aircrafts coming their way. This is a stark contrast to before radar was invented because the pilots had to rely on primitive methods such as dead reckoning, the determining of position by using direction and speed data, compasses, and maps. In order to effectively use these maps, they would have had to have followed highways or different roads. With radar, these old methods were phased out as pilots had more freedom through the better knowledge of their surroundings due to scans by radar. Aircrafts were also significantly able to detect submarines as they were surfacing using radar. RAF aircrafts were able to detect U-966 U-boats. Immediately after the U-boat was detected, it was attacked. There are plenty of cases where submarines were sunk or needed to be abandoned due to damages done by aircrafts. You can thank radar for helping sink over 200 different submarines during the course of World War II alone. Another use of radar in airborne instances was Alfred Loomis's anti-aircraft gun. The new and improved anti-aircraft guns were unimpeded by the time of day or if it was cloudy or not. These anti-aircraft guns were primarily used on ships, which is another way that ships used radar. They were also much more accurate than before, boasting an accuracy of about 1 out of 10, whereas before this invention, it was about 1 in 9,000. Loomis was also part of a project called the MIT Radiation Laboratory. The MIT Radiation Laboratory, also known as Radilab, was a United States research center that invented many different types of radar, all with different purposes. They invented new technologies such as radar, whose scans allowed for more precise bombings, better naval and air early warning systems, and a precise naval locating system. These are all significant in making advancements for warfare through navigation, information, and warning system. A prominent radar system used during the Second World War was called Chain Home. Chain Home was the British code name for a coastal chain of radar stations along the British Isles. The type of radar could detect the enemy from about 100 kilometers away, or over 60 miles. Chain Home prominently showed its value at the Battle of Britain, where it successfully showed the German Luftwaffe were flying in from, so the Royal Air Force was able to intercept them before they ever reached their target. It also gave the British ample time to prepare any other defenses that they deemed necessary. This allowed the British to regain control of the fight and win the Battle of Britain. This was a turning point in the war, as it showed the Germans could be defeated, and it kept Britain in the war, and it made it so that the Allied forces had a place to launch D-Day from. All of this achieved with the help of radar. Other battles that radar was a key point in the success of were Operation Overlord, aka D-Day, and the Battle of Midway. During D-Day, radar was used to help navigate the Allies through the poor weather conditions to their target destinations and to locate the German coastal artillery batteries. During the Battle of Midway, radar-equipped aircraft and surface vessels helped detect and track the Japanese aircrafts and ships, providing critical intelligence to American commanders. Radar-guided aircraft interceptions and anti-aircraft fire contributed to the successful defense of Midway Atoll and the sinking of several Japanese aircraft carriers, turning the tide of the Pacific War in the favor of the Allies. Because of radar's consistent impact throughout World War II, it was consistently tilting the scales in the Allied favor. Radar was constantly developing to counter and solve military problems. Radar was present in almost every battle, whether through radar detection, intelligence gathering, anti-aircraft devices, or early detection. Because of its presence throughout the war and its key role in some of the most critical turning points, it is fair to say that radar was crucial and tilted the tides of World War II. After World War II, radar was less looked into from a military standpoint due to the emergence of satellites in the 1950s. The last major U.S. radar research was in the Radilab, which was brought to an end at the conclusion of the Second World War. As radar was less looked into from a military perspective, it was absorbed more into general life as people realized the benefits radar has. One of the earliest was weather tracking, which was technology used during the war and eventually adapted for public use. Over time, more and more uses have been adapted to the public. Today, radar is used everywhere in daily life. Weather radars such as the Doppler radar and the airborne radar are used to show weather predictions on the forecast. Some of the first radar technologies were donated to weather from World War II and refined to create an early detection and warning system for extreme weathers. Radar has adapted technologies over time until now, stations are able to predict exact precipitation, humidity, and temperature effects, largely due to the innovations of radar. Airports use the FAA Airport Surveillance Radar to detect planes and to detect locations and intensities of precipitation so air traffic can be rerouted to avoid severe weather. Air towers and aircrafts use radar to determine location and altitude to control air traffic, flight patterns, and make sure that the pathways are clear and safe by scanning for obstacles and issues. Radar makes it so that air travel is available and safe on a large scale, as without it, there may be accidents everywhere and we wouldn't have the air travel that we know it as today. Radar is also used in satellites to view the land, see the ocean's topography, and measure the wind and weather. With satellites and ground tracking stations, radar helps make GPS possible as well. GPS has eliminated handheld maps, and it also helps people get around easier because GPS can tell people exactly where they are and give them directions on where best to go. Radar has had a profound impact on society and a massive effect on everyone's daily lives. Radar's effects were exposed to the world on the biggest world stage ever, being World War II. Radar turned the tides of World War II, and its impacts remain and are still felt here today. If you have ever gotten a speeding ticket, flew on a plane, checked the weather, used a GPS, or watched baseball, you've experienced the effects of different forms of radar and their impacts on the world.